Like, why are all the movies that come out for black people are always ghetto movies,
Because we watch
slave
it.
movies, or
Because we watch
well,
it. Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. So today we are reacting to Black American Culture is Dying. Ghetto Blacks are the Black.
okay.
Oh man, this title is interesting. So let's go ahead and jump into it and see what she has to say.
Here is my little 2 cents that nobody asked for. I am sick of seeing Black Americans in the media, on social media, in the news, doing crime, walking around next to naked the women, the men perpetuating gang violence, substance abuse. The absolute worst of our community is oversaturating the media, even though they make up a small percentage of all of Black Americans. The decay of our morality within Black communities has been slowly declining over the past 20 years. And no one...
Now, that is something that people have talked about in the past, but that is only because the media portrays that aspect of black culture and black people. And we've noticed that because when black folks say they want representation, or there should be better representation of black people on television or in the media, they're saying that there should be that representation, that representation of Black Americans. And what we get is hood culture. We get hip hop. We get stuff that isn't necessarily reflective of the values of the average Black American.
I think a lot of times they don't just show these TV shows and movies about hood culture just because. It's because we're watching it. So you have all these drug shows, you have BMF, you have Snowfall, you have Power, you have all these. Who's watching the shows?
Right.
And so it's like reinforcing, like you can hate these stereotypes and then you can hate, you know, how we're being portrayed in the media, but then a lot of times we reinforce it.
Yeah.
You know, and then even the music. Like you bring up rap or hip hop, and then all they're singing about is N word, B word, and I'm a, you know,
unalive. All right, so check it out. And the funny thing about that is, especially when you mention hip hop didn't start that way. It started a different way, but the largest consumer of hip hop was white people, and so because there was a market for it, because there was a huge amount of white people that were consuming it, that means that it can essentially be commoditized, and they can make lots of money off of it.
But the thing is, they're a bigger population than us. We're a minority.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can't just say black people as a whole don't listen to it.
No, black people do listen to it, and what essentially
and reinforce it.
And essentially what has happened, especially with the industry, which has shown and portrayed black people in a certain light, is that when you talk to young black children and you ask them what they want to be when they grow up,
a rapper.
They want to be a rapper. Nobody wants to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a scientist, a biologist. All the other career fields are out there. But I want to be a rapper, or I want to be a basketball player, or some other shit.
Some
you know
sport related.
Yeah, something entertainment related.
And something that is really hard to obtain.
Right, exactly. And so that's my thing. It's like, why are all the movies that come out for black people are always ghetto movies,
because we watch
slave
it.
Movies, or
because we watch it.
Well, it's not just black people that are watching it, but it's also Americans in general. If they, and let me put it like this, if they made a different type of movie with black characters in it, do you think black people would watch it?
As a whole?
Absolutely, yes.
No.
Why is that? Because my thing is that my thing is that it's, and I'm speaking from the position of a black man.
Duh.
These are the only options that they give you. You know what I'm saying? When I was growing up, no. Well, what I'm saying is, all right, let me put it like this. Like when I was growing up, or when you're going to the movies and you have the option of seeing Batman, I don't know, animated Disney movie, and then Boys in the Hood, You know what I'm saying? Like that's your black movie that you get.
So my thing is,
What
why
black-
do we have to look toward entertainment to give us our vocation?
Because this is like the first form of, I guess,
Your first form of what you should be doing is your parents,
absolutely, yeah,
not the movies.
right, yeah, and the thing of it is that a lot of our parents, they are kind of indoctrinated with this system.
Okay. I disagree.
Okay.
Because our parents are from a completely different generation.
Right, exactly.
And
Still a TV and media generation.
I disagree. Our parents are boomers, and I don't believe they are a TV generation. I don't think their ideas came from the media. Their ideas came from their parents, who were the solid generation, and their parents had maybe slaves as parents.
Okay.
You know, if you go back from that generation, like to your great grandparents.
Right.
So all the generations before us, if you think about it, our parents growing up as boomers after the civil rights had a lot of freedoms.
Okay.
So where all of a sudden did this mindset come from? It didn't come from our parents.
No. You're talking about the ghetto mindset?
Yeah, because both of our parents
Right.
grew up in the projects.
Yeah.
But do they act like it?
Right. No, they don't.
I mean, for me growing up, like, you know, and that's why we have a reaction channel. There was music I couldn't listen to, movies I couldn't watch, and books I could not read.
Right.
My mom really controlled those things.
Right.
And so I didn't see Boys in the Hood. I didn't see or listen to NWA. I didn't hear any of those
Right.
things. And not until I got older and we're doing reaction videos, I'm hearing these things. I couldn't even read Goosebumps.
Right.
And so I think it's up to the parents. And I really believe that, yeah, the media pushes out a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
But I think they're able to because there's viewership there. And it's not
Absolutely.
just white viewership. There
Right.
is black viewership.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
There's white and black viewership.
But mainly black viewership.
Okay.
You know, and like even the Good Time show that they did on Netflix, the animated version, because they wanted to redo the show.
Yeah,
A lot
right.
of people, black people, like said, we're going to protest this.
Yeah, right.
Give us something else.
Right.
We're not going to give you our viewership. We're not going to, because our viewership equals dollars.
Yeah.
And that's how it should always be. Like, they wouldn't keep like doing these movies and producing these songs if black people didn't approve of it.
See, and that's why I was mentioning white viewership, because although yes, black viewership can generate money for a lot of these things, especially for things like gangster rap, it's the white viewership who has the power of that dollar, of the money.
I'm gonna disagree.
And this is the other point that I'll make, is that there are, and we see this all the time, we see projects that are solely supported by black people and they're still not good enough, or they don't get the funding that they get. And that is because the black dollar isn't enough.
That's a lie.
All right,
That is a lie.
Then why? And that is the main reason why hip
We
hop
spend the most money. We might have the least amount of money
spend the most money on what?
on media.
On hip hop, and on hip hop music, hip hop movies, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
No, I disagree. And we can
luxury brands.
Okay, yeah,
and
that's luxury brands and fashion.
On
but,
a lot
but
of
we're,
stuff.
But we're talking about media.
We have control over what can be pushed out and how we are viewed.
If black people had more control over the things that they could push out, then more negative things about black culture wouldn't be force fed to us in the media, because
Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree.
somebody would have put a stop to it already. after seeing all the negative things that have happened in America because of ghetto culture.
We just gonna have to
Okay.
agree to
All
disagree.
right.
Let's
All right.
continue.
Okay.
But this is a good conversation.
Past 20 years.
I'm gonna
And
go
no
back a
one
little
is
bit.
talking about it. No one is saying anything. In Black communities has been slowly declining over the past 20 years. And no one is talking about it. No one is saying anything about it or trying to address it. And if you
I
do,
did.
you are often told that you're policing Black bodies. If you say Black women, stop getting on the internet and in the media, twerking, walking around with little clothes on. People tell you that you're policing bodies, policing Black bodies, or it's
Call your
respectability
coon.
politics. If you are Black and you speak your piece on what we're seeing in the media, if you don't like seeing the low morality that is often portrayed about the Black community in the media, from the trap music to the Black women twerking.
Well, I got something to say about that, but I can never live it down, and I am still scarred from this happening. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny when it happened. So years ago, one of my videos went viral on Facebook, and I did a video about the trap music museum that 2 Chainz opened here in Atlanta on Howell Mill. There's a different trap house now. I think T.I. runs it, but I spoke against it.
Right.
Now, I didn't say no one said I was policing Black bodies. They called me coon. They called me Uncle Tom. All for my opinion.
Right.
And I was really hurt. A lot of people didn't disagree with what I said.
Okay.
A lot of people told me to shut up. A lot of people criticized my hair.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm so tired of these natural Black bitches saying stuff, just be quiet.
Right.
And it wasn't like, because it's something that we could have had a conversation about, but there was no constructive criticism about it. It was like, you stupid, and just really being mean.
Right.
And this is from my people.
Right.
Speaking against something that I don't agree with. And I even remember like a pastor of a church making a video telling him to, not do this. And you could tell the pastor was afraid because he didn't want to get
he didn't want to get backlash. Right.
But it got so out of hand. And I remember one girl saying, you should close the comments. She was like, oh my God, you're getting roasted. Why don't you close the comments? Because I knew it wasn't going to age well.
Yeah, right.
And you go back to the comments today, and I'm like, the ignorance is very sad.
Yeah.
But you speak against it, and you are like the enemy. You think I like hurt someone. And the way people defend these things, it's like, although she said it's like a small group of people, they were the loudest.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the people who were like, yeah, I'm tired of seeing like drug culture being uplifted.
Right.
Like they had a stove outside of the trap house.
Yeah.
And which emulates cooking, drugs. And people are like, well, it's art in the house, and he's having people get their nails done. Go get your nails done, sis. And I was like, it's so sad how gullible we are, because I had to tell the girls, and you can't win against the internet, number one. But I was like, that's not even a Black business.
Yeah, right.
The nail salon that he hired to do the women's nails, because he was giving women free manicures and pedicures and stuff like that, which is a great idea. But they made it seem like they were a Black-owned business, and they weren't.
Right.
The people that worked there were Black. And then the man who owned the trap house, he voted against their interests, their better interests.
Right, right.
And I found all that. All you have to do is
look it up.
And some people are just, I really feel like, gullible.
Yeah.
You know, you see something and you take it for what it is. And for me, I was just like, this is no different than painting a slave house pink.
Right. Yeah.
And say, come on in.
And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, the majority of people in the world, or at least in America, are very gullible. And that's why it's important to have media control. Because when the media can dictate a narrative, then it can change and control the minds of the masses.
I mean, but have, like, a thought for yourself, like, and during the time.
I mean, we say that, but we see it all the time.
But the crazy thing for me was, because before that video, I did a video about Sandra Bland and Philando Castile. Nobody cared about those videos.
Yeah, right.
It was like, oh, yeah, I'm upset. It's so sad. Rest in peace. But I do a trap house video, and everybody's like, they want to find me. They are telling me to kill myself and all these things.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, how can you be upset with something like that, but don't feel the same way or have the same energy for those things? And I was like, do you not see how, like, praising drug culture is, like, really affecting our everyday lives? Because Philando just got killed, Sandra just got killed, and do you not think this goes hand in hand?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so.
Oh, well, the other thing with that is that at that time when we had did those videos and we were wondering why certain topics wouldn't take off or they weren't getting the viewership that they got, we thought that it was just because people weren't interested in them. And the reality was we didn't know at the time that certain topics wouldn't be pushed.
No, and that's not what it was. I disagree.
Well, I remember
because they were on Facebook as well. It shows what we as a people care about.
Okay. All right. Fair
to
enough.
me.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when it keeps happening, then it's like, oh, you know, now we want to get outraged.
Right. I mean, and this is the thing, and I'll say this, and I'll leave it at that. At the time we were doing it, we didn't have as much of an understanding of how these platforms work, and now we do have a better understanding of how they work, and it makes sense. That's all I'll say.
Well, okay.
Because now when you go on your Facebook feed, what do you see?
Ads.
Exactly. Who controls that?
But the thing is, because I think more people are angry about the wrong things. Yeah. And Facebook did not push that video. Right. How that video came about to be, like, circulated the way it did, a friend that I went to high school with shared the video. Right. And then somebody she knew shared the video. It had nothing to do with the algorithm. Right. That was all us, baby. Right. So, yes.
The music videos and all over social media, the Sukihanas and the Sexy Reds of the world. If you are black and you take issue with it and you talk about it, you are usually called bourgeois, sadiddy, uppity, it's respectability politics, you're policing black bodies and the like. And it's those like, nice no, words. I'm black too. And as such, this being my ethnic culture as well, I have a right to have something to say about what I'm seeing going on.
Right.
Your average black American is a middle-class, working-class, blue-collar Jane and Joe. The ghetto subculture, black ghetto subculture that we see often portrayed and over-inundated and oversaturating the media, those black Americans make up a tiny, tiny percentage of black Americans as a whole. Yeah. But somehow they're in the media, overcompensating in the media, oversaturating the media. I know I don't just speak for myself.
You know what it is? Because it's not just like ghetto people like pushing that. Right. Because just because you live in a ghetto doesn't mean you act ghetto.
Yeah.
It's people from the suburbs, like black people who never lived in the projects, never lived that kind of life, that like to portray that lifestyle. And we were just talking about it the other day. Like, the neighborhood you grew up in was a very nice neighborhood. But somehow those kids was like, I'm just gonna slang on the corner.
Right. I'm associating myself with this kind of thing. And that's what I was saying before. Like, you know, on some part of it, it's a cultural issue, because black people have an issue with identifying what side of the culture that they exist on, whether it's American culture, or an idea of black American culture, or this subculture of hip hop, or just a lower class of culture, which people would consider ghetto. And somewhere it's like black people just kind of take all of it inside.
It sounds like an identity crisis.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah.
I mean, I remember growing up, because we talked about this before a long time ago in another video, when we moved to a different neighborhood.
Yeah, right.
Like, because we were living with my grandma for a while, and, you know, then we moved, and then I had to go to a different school.
Oh, yeah.
And they was like, you talk white. And I was like,
Right.
what does that mean? And then I was like, I had to pick up on it. It's like, oh, I can't talk like this. I have to switch the way I talk,
Yeah.
because obviously I'm not black enough, even though, like, it was just a weird time as a child. And so maybe a lot of black people had to go through that, like trying to prove to a certain small sector of people, you have to prove your blackness.
Yeah. We talked about this before, and many black people talk about what they have to do, which is code switching and then reverse code switching.
Yeah. And so when she said, I'm black too, and I should have something to say, like,
Right.
I really felt that,
Yeah.
because a lot of times you feel like,
You're
as
excluded.
a people, we have groupthink. And so if you don't think like the group, it's like, you ain't black.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah.
you are wrong.
Right.
And you feel like,
Excommunicated.
yes. And so you won't be excommunicated. Let me just try to fit in, you know, and maybe that's what's happening to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I say that I'm sick of seeing it, that it's gross, that it is destroying what black culture actually is. It's co-opting black culture as a whole and making it seem as though all of black culture is ghetto subculture. I'm not the only black American who takes issue with it. Because like I said, majority of black America is middle class, not in the ghettos, not out here perpetuating gang violence, promiscuity, and everything else. And I don't care if you claim it's respectability politics. I guess so. So be it. Because this is gross. It's getting really gross out here how blatantly disrespectful and low class we're acting on social media and in the media, on the internet, on TV. And you can claim that this is someone else's set of moral standards, but no, it isn't. It isn't. Look at Black America in the 50s, in the 60s.
That's what I was saying.
Our moral standards back then, drastically different from what we have today, or what we're convincing ourselves is a moral standard today. Every racial group on the face of the planet has their own ghetto subculture within their respective racial and ethnic groups. This is the case for everybody, everywhere. White people, Asian people, Mexican people, you name it. The difference is that those racial groups and those ethnic groups do not allow their ghetto subculture to co-opt the entire culture as a whole and to represent the entire culture as a whole. They don't allow it. Everybody else within that respective ethnic group or cultural group or racial group has a right to say how they want to see themselves represented in the media, what they want to see and what they don't want to see, who gets to speak for them and who does not. Except for when you're a Black American and you have something to say about the way that you see Black Americans being portrayed in the media, and you have a critique for your peers. You can't do it because it's respectability politics if you attempt to do it. Or you're judging your peers by a set of moral standards that somebody else created, which is a farce.
And essentially, that's what I was saying before, as far as Black people have no control over how the media presents their depiction, but
That's
also
not what she said.
Well,
that's not what she said.
Well, what I'm saying is, what does she say?
She's saying no other culture allows their subculture or less respectable culture that's a part of their main culture to take over that culture. Right. But it's not like they don't have control. She said they don't allow it.
Okay.
We
Okay. then
as the black people as a whole
yeah,
has allowed
right.
it, and it has affected our lives
Right.
because, like she said, in
Right.
the 50s and 60s, it was completely different.
Absolutely.
The music was different, and
Right.
we were talking about this in music reactions
Right.
because we was like, there was a degradation of music that
Right.
happened, and I believe it because people went from being married, having a mother and the father in the household, and then to the the 80s, early 80s, late 80s until now,
Right.
baby mama culture.
Right. Absolutely. And this is what I'm getting at is that, like, my parents wouldn't allow me to behave a certain way. And I think this is the case with a lot of black people, is that they, especially for our generation coming up, I think that it's changing now, but parents, even whether it was the 60s, 70s, 80s, wouldn't allow their children to act or behave a certain way. And where I say, what I mean by they can't control it is because although black folks speak up about their depiction or things that they don't like or that ghetto culture is being put on blast, it's like you said, those voices are silenced. And because they don't own or control the media companies, or they don't own or control the radio, or they don't own or control the things that are put out into the world to show a negative depiction of black people or even black culture, it's kind of like this is what's fed to them.
But I feel like at some point that's not taking accountability. And because think about it, like she said, 60s, 70s, everybody was married. It was like a family unit. I don't think 70% of households becoming single family households was because of the media.
No.
We had control over that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That is something that
Right. I don't think that at that time there was a I don't think that at that time there wasn't as much control over people as there is now. Because I believe that people now are way more highly influenced by the media versus back in the 50s and 60s, people didn't have television or internet or social media the way that we have it now. You had your uncle, you had your father, you had people to tell you what's right from wrong. And a lot of times with our generation, we are in a generation of where the internet raises your children or television raises their children.
But whose fault is that?
Well, I mean, that's American culture. We've talked about this before where we grew up as latchkey kids. When I came home from school, my parents were at work. And so I watched TV. You know what I'm saying? And although my parents tried to instill the best knowledge that they could, essentially, when I came home and I watched TV, a lot of what I saw on television is what influenced me. And fortunately, I did have those good, what do they call it? Representation on TV to kind of say, oh, I like this and I want to be like this. But I could also separate and differentiate between things like Ice Cube or gangster rap or being a murderous gangster on television versus my real life. And I understand that a lot of other people didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? So.
Well, that's what your parents are there for.
Right. But and we talk about
because your parents eventually came home after work.
But we also talk about this. We talk about this. We talk about this all the time as well. Is the culture of America, and right now we're having a backlash of it. We're having a backlash of people who talk about and complain about how they work too much and how they don't get to enjoy their life, how they don't get to enjoy spending time with their children or raising their children. This is something that has been normalized within American culture in general because that's what they do. When I was growing up, my parents spent a significant amount of time at work. And the only time I actually seen my parents or was able to do something with them was over the weekend. And that's just the reality. It's the reality for a majority of working class Americans is that they got to go to work. And so, and teachers will tell you that a lot of parents send their kids to school as like a daycare. And they don't spend time doing their children's homework when they get home from work because they're tired and they got to prepare for the next day. And so, yeah, the media, that's what happens. The media raises them.
So what would you think would be the reason why everybody else is doing better than us with that same culture, American culture, with
Stronger
media?
family unit. There's
But
a strong.
you
There's
just
there's,
said-
there's a stronger family unit, and then there's better representation in the media for the things that they can be inspired to do. Because and I'll say it like this: for black kids will gravitate towards other things on the television or in the media that looks like them. As I said, when there's positive representation, such as Different World, Cosby Show, or positive forms of hip hop music, black people, black children, they will gravitate towards that, and they will behave accordingly. But when you see negative depictions, like one right after another, then that's what they're going to gravitate towards. And that's why we have a culture of middle-class black Americans, but then they still want to act and pretend like they're good gangsters or hood or ghetto.
Okay.
But for white children, they can see that, but then they can look at their father, their uncle, or family members who do other, or they can watch TV or the media and see a different depiction and still have ideas of the things that they want to do, and they disassociate themselves from the things that happen in black culture because it's not them or it's not their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, something that you said that was important, though, you said they can look at their family members and have a good representation.
Yeah.
So you're making it seem like black people didn't have that.
They did to some degree, yeah. And but then
what you're saying is, you said your parents weren't home and
Mm-hmm.
you only see them on the weekend, and so you said that is typical of American culture. But then you say the white kids have a better representation from their family members,
Mm-hmm.
but you just said they aren't around. So I'm just trying to like reconcile how that makes sense, because I mean, that's the whole point that
Right.
I was saying. You got to be around whether you work or not.
Right.
Like the average American had to work. A
Right.
lot of kids,
Yeah.
Gen X, millennials were latchkey kids, but like I stated before, your parents came home
Right, yeah.
from work. They came
Right.
home and they were there over the weekend, and so there's still that influence, and it's still, being there for your kids. Your father decided to be in the house and marry your mother.
Right, yeah.
It's a decision.
Right, yeah.
That's all I was saying.
Okay.
And so it's not just, all black kids have is the media to raise them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the parents had the child.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
so accountability means the father knows the mom is pregnant, marry her.
Yeah, yeah.
Be in the house.
Right.
Of course you have to work.
Right.
But not being there at all
Right.
is not because of the media.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. I do agree that on a lot of levels there is a lack of accountability with black men during that time period, which led to a gross amount of single mothers raising
And it's not
children.
just black men. I'm just saying as black people as a whole.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's all I was saying.
Okay.
Let's continue. Oh, where's the little arrow?
From the Reconstruction era down through the 60s, black Americans had their own set of moral standards and social protocols that we adhered to. Ask your grannies, ask your great grannies, they'll tell you. I have had just about enough of seeing black culture being drugged through the muck by other black Americans who are perverting it and turning black culture, something that is beautiful, into something perverse. Showing their ass on the internet all the time. The men are constantly rapping and talking about gang violence. Our children are uneducated and stupid. We've created a cultural standard of promiscuity and single motherhood. And when a black American goes to critique and judge our peers, our fellow black Americans, and critique the condition of our neighborhoods today, they're shut down. That's respectability politics. You're policing Black Americans. If that's what it is, so be it. So be it. It needs to be said.
It would be
And
nice
in order for us to attempt to escape accountability or responsibility on our own part, we claim that the conditions that we see in Black communities is being caused by somebody else. It's not our own fault. It's white people and it's structural racism or something or another. It's everybody else's fault except for our own. Give me a break. It's pitiful. It's pitiful that we refuse to take accountability for the things that we see going on in our communities. And sure, we can acknowledge that structural racism and the history of slavery in this country and discrimination and Jim Crow and Black codes and all of that has played a part in the conditions and some of the conditions that we see in Black communities, but we also have to be responsible for the ways in which Black Americans create their own conditions and contribute to the degenerative effects that we see going on in our communities. Black Americans who don't want to hear that immediately run to innocence. They rush to innocence. They claim that it's respectability politics to call out these issues in our community. They claim that it's policing Black bodies to call out the low morality and the moral decay in our community. Call it whatever you want. You're not going to get me to shut up about it. I'm Black. This is my culture too. I have a right to talk about and critique what is happening in my culture and have something to say about it. That's all.
That's right, girl. Yeah. So I have something to say about also calling it the
low morality.
Okay, yeah.
The biggest problem, because sometimes I just sit back and think about things and think about the things that I have said and the conversations we had, and I realized just because we're the same race doesn't mean we're part of the same community.
Okay.
Because community means we share the same values.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And community is not based on race.
Right, okay.
And
I agree.
I think the biggest problem, because I'm about to say the Black community, is we're basing the community on being Black.
Right. And that's grouping everyone's values all in one same bucket, and it's not the same.
And that's the biggest problem. Yeah. That's the biggest problem we're having.
I agree.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's like no wonder people from outside the community get confused, or they look at everything as all one monolith.
Right. Yeah. And we continue to scream, we're not a monolith, but then say the Black community need to do this, and that's like,
that's why
we don't share the same values.
I agree. Right.
Yeah. So those are our thoughts on this conversation. I hate to say this, but she's brave.
Yeah, she's
very brave.
Yeah.
Because if you do not participate in group think, you will be shut down. You will be called a traitor, an Uncle Tom. She was saying that people was saying, oh, respectability politics, you're doing policing Black bodies. I've never heard those words being used. They're usually much harsher words being used. So, yeah, that very interesting. Yeah. But great conversation. A lot of times, I know I'm scared to have these conversations because of how I was treated in the past. But it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Right. And
now that I realize that just because someone looks like me doesn't mean they are like me, and that we share the same values.
There you go. Right.
So thank you so much for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below, and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel so we can maybe do more videos like this.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys later. Take care.
Ta-ta.
Peace.